Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Sims, a reporter with Fox 5 Atlanta. You're watching the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young debate series. This is the general election debate for candidates in Congressional District 7. In order to ensure everyone's safety, the candidates and panelists are participating from their homes. The Atlanta Press Club gives a special thank you to Georgia Public Broadcasting for helping to organize these online debates. Now, let's meet the candidates. They are, in alphabetical order, Carolyn Bordeaux, a Democrat who's been a professor at the Andrew Young School of Public Policy at Georgia State University since 2003, and Rich McCormick, a Republican who's a pilot and emergency medicine physician who spent more than 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps and Navy. Now it's time to meet our panelists. They are Chenue Her, a reporter at 11 Alive, and Curt Yeomans, a senior reporter with the Gwinnett Daily Post. Now, let's get started. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer their questions and 30 seconds to respond in rebuttals. I will hold up a piece of paper letting candidates know when they have 10 seconds remaining. For the full set of rules, you can visit the Atlanta Press Club website at atlantapressclub.org. Now, to start the debate, each candidate will be asked 2 questions. Chenue, you get the first question to Rich McCormick.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, Dr. McCormick. According to a census report, the district you are running to represent is 21% Black, 16% Asian, 20% Hispanic, and 40% white. Now, studies have shown that during the COVID-19 pandemic, Black and Brown residents are disproportionately impacted by the virus, partially due to poorer access to quality health care. How do you plan to fight for those communities so they have proper access to health care now and in the future?
So great question. I've actually been on the front lines of this disease, as you probably recall. I'm an emergency medicine physician, literally just had 3 shifts in a row a day ago, just finished those. I see people no matter what their coverage is. You can come to the emergency department and I promise you, no matter who you are, what your background is, what your income level is, you get the exact same treatment. I think the best way to create equality in our society is, first of all, to make sure that everybody's employed. If you have more jobs than people, then everybody has the upward mobility. And you talk about the diverse immigrant population, which is about a quarter of our population. Think about that. You come to America for opportunities. If you have employment, you have good health care. And if you don't have an employment, we have a plan for that too. I think pre-existing conditions have to be covered. Everybody agrees on that, Republicans and Democrats. We want to make sure we have the best and robust health care system in the world, which we do. We just need to make it more affordable.
All right, thank you. Curt, it's your turn to ask a question to Carolyn Bordeaux.
Dr. Bordeaux, there's been television ads that have been critical of the state budgets that were passed while you were the budget director. Do you stand by the budgets that were passed during that time, or are there any changes that you would make in hindsight?
So I was director of the Georgia Senate Budget and Evaluation Office during the Great Recession, the worst fiscal crisis the state has faced since the Great Depression. Georgia's revenues plunged by 20%. I was director, and what I could do was help guide the legislature through the process by presenting options. And my priority was to protect core services while creating a platform for Georgia to get back on its feet after the crisis had passed. The budgets passed by broad and bipartisan majorities. And at the end of my time there, I was honored with a special resolution for significant service to the state of Georgia. So while there are things here and there, yes, obviously that could be changed. At the same time, these were broad and bipartisan budgets that got Georgia back on its feet.
Okay, our next question, Chenue, goes to Carolyn Bordeaux as well.
Dr. Bordeaux, we continue to see the fallout of small businesses across our state due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but right now, Republicans and Democrats are struggling to find common ground on a second relief package to help Americans. If you are to be the representative for this district, what is your plan and message for those in Washington to ensure small businesses in District 7 will get the help that they need now and moving forward?
Yes, so we've already had several roundtables discussing what we need to do for small businesses as a part of the campaign. And it is very frustrating to see this kind of gridlock over really much needed support for our small business community. We need to extend the PPP program and other grant and loan programs to make sure that our small businesses can stay afloat throughout this crisis. But let me be clear, this crisis has been mismanaged. The reason we need another package of support is because our president and our governor, and unfortunately many Republicans, have failed to get this disease under control. We've had 210,000 people die in this country because of COVID. And we have, problems with testing. We have problems with PPE right now still. We don't have the contact tracing. We don't have the supports in place that we need to get this disease under control. So my first priority would be to listen to the public health experts and get the disease under control. Then we can get our children back in school and our economy back on its feet.
Ms. Bordeaux, thank you. Curt, you get the final question in this round for Rich McCormick.
Dr. McCormick, I believe we talked earlier this year at a Gwinnett GOP meeting where you mentioned that you supported ending the additional unemployment benefits that businesses have said have hurt their ability to recruit new employees. If ending those benefits does not result in more workers going to work, what legislation would you propose if you're elected to get people back to work or to help those people who cannot get back to work get benefits?
So many times we turn to government to solve problems that they've created. If you want businesses to get back on their feet, the first thing you do is empower the business. You don't hammer them with extra regulation and taxation. You allow them to create jobs. The government doesn't create jobs. The government consumes. They tax other people and they decide where that money's going to go based on who's in power at the time. I believe in the business owner over the bureaucrat. I believe that you can continue to expand the job market by lessening taxations, by increasing the loans that we have for small businesses that create 60% of the workforce, by making sure that we protect the future of America by having those businesses stay open. If you want to support people who cannot go back to work legitimately, then of course, but don't encourage people to stay unemployed when there's help wanted signs all over the place, including my mom's business, which she cannot get somebody to come back to work because of the fact that people won't come back to work because they make more money staying at home. We have to do it smarter, and a lot of times government's not good at that.
Thank you. That concludes the first portion of the debate. The candidates will now take turns asking each other a question. Candidates will have 15 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Carolyn Bordeaux, you may ask the first question to your opponent.
Okay, so Rich, on numerous occasions, you have downplayed this virus. Back in early March, you said it'd be a bad memory in 2 months. On June 1st, you said that we'd achieved herd immunity, which means the crisis is over. You doubled down on that on September 8th. Do you stand by these statements that the crisis is over and we've hit herd immunity?
Okay. One of the dishonest things that I've seen from the DCCC talking points is that I don't take this disease seriously. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I'm the one that put my life on the line by going to work during this pandemic and not quitting and taking time off to do this campaign. I have been on the front lines intubating patients, one of the most dangerous things you can possibly do. I've seen who does and who does not have high risk when it comes to this disease process. The great majority of people who are dying from this are people in nursing homes. The people who have jeopardized those people are government officials who have encouraged bad behavior, such as sending people with disease process back to those places that are the most vulnerable. If you're old, over the age of 70, if you're invalid, if you have pre-existing conditions, then you are at high risk. I've always said that. But the young, healthy population has similar problems to everybody else, to any novel virus. And the fact of the matter is, even though we've had an open economy and we're getting back to work, the ER is emptying out, the ICU is emptying out, the floor is emptying out. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing firsthand. And I think we can get back to work safely.
Thank you. Dr. Bordeaux, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Yeah, one of the reasons it is so shocking to me that you continue to downplay the virus is you see the frontline impact of it. 210,000 people have died of this disease. You were saying that we'd hit herd immunity on June 1st. And within a few weeks, we were registering some of the highest number of cases in the country. And this is why over 150 medical professionals in Georgia, including some of the leading infectious disease experts, have asked the Medical Association of Georgia to rescind their endorsement of you.
Thank you, Dr. Bordeaux. Dr. McCormick, it's your turn to ask a question now.
Okay. I think this is important. If you look around the United States, in states that are failing, such as New York and California, where millions of people are moving out of those states, and you look at places in Georgia that aren't doing as well as here in this district, why would you move to this district and want to do the same things that California and New York and those districts are doing, which is increase taxes, increase the size of government, when we've been successful with conservative values in this district here?
I got into this race because everybody needs quality, affordable health care. And I have spent years talking to people about that issue. My own parents struggled with it. My father had a debilitating illness for up to 10 years, and all of their discretionary income was eaten up paying for prescription medications. People in this district pay extortionary rates for health insurance. They pay very high rates for prescription medications. 120,000 people in this district don't have health care. And we need to address that. We have people who are dying because of it, showing up at the ER with advanced stage breast cancer, advanced stage rheumatoid arthritis, having strokes because they couldn't afford to see a doctor early on. It is morally wrong. It is fiscally irresponsible. And I am here to make sure that the people of this district have the health care that they need.
Thank you. Dr. McCormick, you have 30 seconds for a response.
I find it's very dishonest and hypocritical when a candidate who's had tens of thousands of dollars contributing to her campaign is from pharmaceuticals, very people who are robbing us and making this unaffordable. I think it's dishonest when you say an ER doctor doesn't care about a disease when I've been going by the leading edge of technology the entire time. Those 100 physicians you talk about that talked against me donated $200,000 to the Democratic Party, and almost none of them belong to our district and none of them are Republicans. So I think it's hypocrisy and division that's very insulting to the American public when you talk about the reality of healthcare.
Thank you both. That concludes our second round. For those of you who are just joining us, this is the debate between candidates for Congressional District 7. We'll now go back to our panel to ask questions until we run out of time. Now, I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate, but candidates may raise their hand if they feel that they should get a response. Now, Curt, you get the first question in this round to the candidate of your choice.
Well, this question actually goes to both candidates. If you were elected to Congress, what would you do as part of the pandemic response that we haven't seen yet?
I can certainly take it.
We'll go in alphabetical order. Start with Dr. Bordeaux.
Okay, so I mean, we have absolutely failed to get the disease under control, and we don't have national leadership with respect to this. My sister works in public health, and states are having to try to get together to form a coalition to make sure that we have the testing, the contact tracing, the systems in place to get the disease under control. We also need to tell people they need to wear masks. So those are some of the things we need to do. We also need to support our small businesses and our families to make sure that they get through that crisis. And all of that aid is running out. The reason our economy is okay right now is because of the enormous bill that was just passed by Congress. And that is running out, and you are going to see really devastating impact, not only on our small businesses, not only on our families, but also on our state and local governments. And so that is another piece that really needs to be addressed, is making sure that we shore up state and local governments so that they can make it through this crisis.
Dr. McCormick?
Yeah, so when you talk about stimulus bill, there's 3 stimulus bills that are being held up by Nancy Pelosi right now that 400 out of the 435 congressmen would approve right now, but she wants to play politics and put politicians over people. That's the problem with politicians right now. You're sending bureaucrats up there to do something that we need people who care about bipartisan solutions to get done. The fact of the matter is a $3.3 trillion bailout that rewards special interest lobbyists, union workers, and things that have nothing to do with COVID response is, of course, not going to be passed. But you have 3 other bills that would be passed that won't be brought to a vote because of politics. If you want to talk about New Jersey and New York with the most draconian control measures, but the highest death rates, that's government at work. We need to have autonomy. We need to push this down to medical professionals. Stop having the bureaucracies get in the way of progress. When you have trillions of dollars out there ready to solve healthcare issues, it's disingenuous to think that they're going to solve it better than healthcare professionals who've been doing it their entire life.
Thank you both. Chenue, it is your turn to ask a question.
This question is for Dr. McCormick. So for the last several months, we've seen national unrest over deaths of unarmed Black people, including right here in Georgia in the Ahmaud Arbery case out of Brunswick, and the Rayshard Brooks case out of Atlanta. Now, as riots and protests erupted, including right here in the metro, we started seeing calls for governments to defund the police, while at the same time seeing local police officers quit their jobs out of concern for their own safety. What are policies you can bring forward to ensure both sides of this conversation feel that they are represented and also bridge that gap?
Okay, I'm a Morehouse guy. I taught at Morehouse College. I was student body president at Morehouse School of Medicine. I have a lot of friends who've been concerned about this issue too. We took time out to have a bipartisan meeting between people of all races, all gender, all backgrounds, all political backgrounds. And you know what we did? We kept it from being political. We had great conversations. We were able to include police officers, police chiefs, sheriff's departments. We were able to have a good discussion that wasn't divisive. As soon as you make this political, you take out half of the people in America from solving the very problem. Politicians and regulations are not the solution to the problems that most of the time were created by government to begin with. If you look at the problems we're having, it's because government has created something that didn't work. Why would we turn back to the government to solve something that they created in the first place? Let's make this about people, not politics, and we'll solve it right away.
Now, Dr. Bordeaux, I know that's one of your platform issues as well. I'd like to give you a minute to respond to that question.
Okay, certainly. Yeah. So we need to have a very important conversation about race in this country. And while I do think a lot of it does have to be solved at the community level, there are really clear policies that are affecting the Black community and the Hispanic community in this district in major ways. I know many Black friends and neighbors who are frightened when a police officer pulls them over. They're afraid they're going to be shot, and they are treated like criminals. And it is really distressing. So yes, we need to have a conversation, but we also need some policies to address this issue and to rebuild trust between the police and our Black and brown communities in this district. I support establishing a national registry of police misconduct, having third parties investigate this, and having national use of force standards, banning things like chokeholds. These are the kind of policies that need to be put forward to get us to a constructive solution to this issue.
Thank you both. Curt, it's your turn for another question.
And this is another question for both candidates. This time we'll start with Dr. McCormick responding, as we start with Dr. Bordeaux last time. But Gwinnett and Forsyth counties both have large numbers of foreign-born residents. In Gwinnett County, the 287G program has been a major issue in the last few years. What is your stance on 287G, and what would you do to address it in the legislative manner, whether it be changing it or strengthening it?
Sure. So I think it's important to recognize that we're strengthened by our immigrant population. They're some of the most successful people in this district, people from India, the Far East, from down south in Mexico, Central America, South America. We have great support in our candidacy by those very individuals. And what's ironic is that a lot of them support the 287G because they know it's taking the criminal element, those people who are most violent, and preying off of that same immigrant population out of that. And ICE is going to do something. They're employed for a reason. Why wouldn't you want them to focus on the criminal element that is preying on the very immigrants that you're discussing? Those people are not going to go after people that they know are well protected. They're going to go after people who are vulnerable, who don't feel like they can report the crimes because they're scared to come out in the open. 287G takes those criminal elements out of that population and makes it safer when you talk about violent and disgusting criminals.
Dr. Bordeaux.
So that's not actually what 287G does. It allows our local sheriffs to act as agents of ICE. And what this means is that the Hispanic community is afraid to call local law enforcement when they see crimes being committed because they are afraid they themselves are going to be arrested, or maybe a family member might. And it's part of a certain amount of harassment that is really happening in the Hispanic community, and it makes all of us less safe. So I strongly support getting rid of the 287G program. But Rich McCormick talks a good game about immigrants, but he is supported by Numbers USA, an extreme anti-immigrant group. He has received a top rating from this organization, a better rating than Mitch McConnell or Karen Handel. And he opposes birthright citizenship. He opposes family immigration, and he opposes the H-1B programs that are responsible for attracting the best and the brightest to our community.
Dr. McCormick, we're going to give you a rebuttal on that one.
Well, thank you. First of all, there's a lot of factual incorrectness in that, so I'm just going to call it what it is. Just like her commercials on me, they're a bunch of lies. I mean, she's putting words in my mouth constantly. Because somebody supports me doesn't put words in my mouth. I'm a leader, not a follower. And secondly, to say that it's better and safer to not put criminals, violent criminals, out of the United States who are from another country is certainly not safe. So I think that's doublespeak and typical hypocrisy from the left when they say it's safer to not put away violent criminals and deport them.
Thank you. Chenue, it's your turn for another question.
This question is for Dr. Bordeaux. Even though we are still in a pandemic, we do see schools that are already going back to in-person learning, including all grade levels up to college. And since then, we've had outbreaks at some schools, such as Georgia Tech, UGA, and even a national headline in North Paulding High School. Do you think it is still too early to have in-person learning for teachers and students?
Okay, so just to go back to Rich's comments before, we can send out the survey to fact check that one in terms of Numbers USA. But anyway, going back to COVID in schools, I think schools can be opened safely, but it has to be done with real care, and you have to follow CDC guidance in order to do that. We have seen Georgia State is, struggling to reopen. About 10% of students are back in the classrooms. They are doing a lot of testing, which is very, very helpful, and making sure that students are able to socially distance. And they're offering a lot of digital classroom experiences. The other thing to know, for instance, in Gwinnett schools, over 50% of Gwinnett students are actually being schooled at home through digital learning. And this is a result of the failure of the Republicans to get control of this disease. My opponent has said we've reached herd immunity on June 1st. On September 8th, he said the same thing. He is showing up at events not wearing a mask that are in close quarters. He is not following CDC guidelines, and this is part of the problem.
Dr. Bordeaux, thank you. Dr. McCormick, we're going to give you a response to the last point that Ms. Bordeaux made.
Thank you. So I follow CDC guidance. I follow the governor's guidance. I'm usually social distance from people. When I get together with pictures, I'm okay with that. You're talking about mostly young, healthy people who are asymptomatic, which the World Health Organization said gives me a low chance of communicability in short periods of time. If you want to talk about science, I am the medical professional here. I have tested negative for the disease recently, and I think I'm doing things right when I'm the one that treats patients for a living. To think that I'm unsafe is just as dishonest as anything. Call a Marine, call a physician unsafe, somebody who's been working for their community their entire life. I think it's, once again, shows the divisiveness of politicians.
Thank you both. That is all the time we have for questions. Now, each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. Rich McCormick, you get the first closing statement.
Thank you. So I think it's clear what we both stand for. One candidate stands for larger government, more government solutions, more ideas that are based on a centralization of solutions. I stand for believing in people. I believe in business owners more than bureaucrats. I believe in healthcare workers more than some department in DC. I believe in teachers and parents more than our failing educational system that's centered in DC with 80,000 employees that want to tell you what to do with your kids. I believe in the people. The ultimate minority is the individual with God-given rights that we grant back to the government in small portions. And at best, the government is a necessary evil. And we should give everybody a fair shake. But in the end, having upward mobility and freedoms and liberties and security are what makes America great. And that's what we should be pursuing for all people.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Carolyn Bordeaux, you get the final closing statement.
So I live in Suwanee with my husband and my 8-year-old son, and I am deeply concerned about his future. I teach at Georgia State at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, and I have spent my life in public service, working to solve problems on behalf of people. I have worked for members of Congress, for U.S. Senate. I was director of Georgia's Senate Budget and Evaluation Office during the Great Recession, the worst fiscal crisis the state has faced since the Great Depression. And I worked on budgets that passed with broad and bipartisan majorities. I have this experience, and this can help get us through this crisis. I got into this race because our elected officials have lost their line of sight to the people of this district, and my opponent represents the positions and policies that have failed us and that have gotten us into this mess now. We need to get COVID under control to get our children back in school and our businesses back on their feet. We need affordable, quality health care, and we need to renew our democracy. And I ask for your support on November 3rd.
Thank you. That concludes our debate. We would like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Don't forget to turn in your absentee ballot if you requested one. And early voting in person began yesterday and runs through October 30th. Thank you to the candidates and panel for participating in the debate. I would also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club and Georgia Public Broadcasting for arranging today's debate. For more information on the full schedule, you can visit theatlantapressclub.org. This debate will be available for viewers to watch on demand on Atlanta Press Club's Facebook page and on Georgia Public Broadcasting's website, which is gpb.org. I'm Claire Sims. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.